This is fascinating to me. I'd love to go here next. I think about the appetite and appetite suppression system in the body. So leptin is released when, we're full, and ghrelin is released when we're hungry. And so if we're not sleeping enough, if our building blocks are removed, if our body is essentially way out of homeostasis because of lifestyle or pollutants or EMF or you name it, then we're more likely to reach for unhealthy things because we're really just wanting to find peace. So I wonder, and it's not a direct question, but maybe it is, there's got to be some component to weight loss and the Ormus, the Shilajit, and the gold, because you're essentially bringing yourself back to homeostasis without too many calories, right? Could this take the place of a meal? This isn't medical advice. None of this is, right? This isn't dietary advice, but it sure is fun to talk about because I think about how many choices. I used to be 280 pounds. I used to be very, very overweight. And when I traced it back in many plant medicine ceremonies, it all came from just not feeling loved, going through trauma. My mom was bipolar. My dad left early. And by the way, I love y'all. You did the best you could with the level of consciousness you have. So there's nothing but love there. Yet that created a cascade in my nervous system that I am still at 44, still repairing in certain ways. And I wonder from a weight loss perspective, I don't know if there's hard science on this or not, but to me, it's a no-brainer. Like I can see it. If my system is more centered and more homeostatic, then I'm going to be less likely to eat extra calories or to have high levels of ghrelin, which makes me, I've read data. If you have elevated ghrelin, you can eat upwards to 500 more calories per day. So I wonder how that works out with the Shilajit, the Ormus, and the gold.
Yeah, I feel like that once you start talking like that, it's definitely an upstream, downstream value.
It seems like it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And the upstream of that is, it comes back to the computer again, right? The analogy that we've been using is once that software is exposed and going online and then updated with a charge, I feel like some of those emotional dopamine and serotonin hits for eating will subside.
Yeah.
So I think it's
because they're more stress-based.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
not hunger, it's stress-based hunger.
Totally. And it's almost like what you were saying about coffee before, right? Coffee is just like turning a light switch on, whereas taking something like minerals is the sun's rising in perfect harmony. So it's almost like everything's working in harmony versus like an external stimulant turning you straight on.
Yeah.
So it's exactly what the minerals are doing for the software. So the conductors, the superconductors, everything's coming online where it needs to in perfect harmony. It's like that mineral wheel or the mineral chart. There's specific minerals that operate in harmony. So like vitamin D and calcium work incredible together. So it's almost like everything starts to work in harmony versus it's like back to dissonance and resonance. When we're in resonance in our life, that serotonin and, those dopamine receptors, they're actually working perfectly how they should be. But as soon as we're out of alignment, you're going to reach for the donut. You're going to, because you need that hit. It's about stimulation again. And it's like once you get all those building blocks of life, all those raw materials that you have in the fulvic and humic acid and the ocean plasma, you don't necessarily need that. And I know for myself, I don't need a lot of that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that you bring it up. Yeah, it's a great process to go through.
I mean, it's hard to claim direct weight loss component to the fulvic and the minerals and everything in the mana, but it's there. It's like, this is anecdotally speaking, like I've lost 20 pounds since we podcasted. A huge piece of this I know is mana. Mm-hmm. I can't medically say that it is, but I feel it because I haven't drank coffee for so long. I had one coffee in Iowa on a business trip. It destroyed me. Wow. It absolutely destroyed me. I was a raging asshole. I was not a good dude to be around. And when I get back to my processes, like having the mana, having the paraxanthine, having clean water, being at home, not being on a freaking airplane, like there's certain things that just kick me out of center. I really notice it. I mean, I noticed when I got back from traveling that there was this pull in my system to go eat more food when I got home. I'm like, no, I ate. I don't need more. So I made a conscious decision to not eat extra food. Of course, part and parcel, I take the mana, I take my other supplements on the plane. So it's like, I can see it, but I wonder, have you had people write in, talk in, has anybody said this? I know you can't say medically that it happens, but anecdotally, have y'all seen this?
Yeah, 100%.
The weight loss component, it's got to be real.
100%. And the mana's doing something else. We don't talk about it too often, but because it's improving that bioenergetic field that we touched on before, is actually interacting with our high dimensional template in a very, let's say, in a way where there's less resistance and less interference, because again, we're removing the interference within our biocircuitry. So we're becoming more conductive, more superconductive. And that higher dimensional template, when we can interface closer with that higher dimensional template is the correct weight. So it makes sense that we start to align with that from a weight perspective as well. And we've had tons of feedback of people losing weight.
It makes sense. I don't know if y'all know this, but I used to be a Mercedes-Benz technician. So that was my first trade out of high school. And I love what I do now. I was not honoring my gifts then. I do enjoy learning how things work, which is why I do enjoy learning about science. And like this podcast, I know for all of us is interesting because these are things that normally, we don't talk about, and they're really fun to learn. But I remember when I was a mechanic that if a car had a drivetrain that had too much friction, or if a car had a tire that was out of alignment, if something was out of complete how it was built, out of complete center for that vehicle, when it came off the factory line, the gas mileage would go down. And so if we were to look at the body as a car, if we're not sleeping, if we're being polluted upon and bathing in EMF and all these different things, could there be one way to just course correct everything, or at least put us on that path? I think so. We get our vehicle aligned, we fix the drivetrain, we remove essentially the friction, is what I'm saying. We remove the friction from the vehicle, and then now it's operating without so much fuel. I think the body's the same way. When we remove the friction from the body and all the synergistic systems that bring us to center and homeostasis, it seems to me, I wonder how y'all feel, it seems to me that we just don't need as many calories. We don't need as much food that we thought we did, because it was all being driven by either stress eating or just us being out of alignment in many ways.
Yeah, it's a cellular charge. It's like a battery. Like that battery's got to have like a negative charge, like the cell battery's got to have a negative charge. And if that's operating, like it's always downstream, upstream, downstream. If that negative charge is at a low capacity, the gears are going to be grinding harder somewhere else and taking so much than it needs to in perfect harmony. It comes back to that harmony again as well. So yeah, I totally agree. I feel like that it's so obvious now to me that, we have to have, when you go through those airports, and when you're talking about airports, going through those airports over the last couple of weeks, it just taxes your body. And then when you're in the air, you're in like this aluminium or this like metallic.
We're in a tube, 30 grand in the sky.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not designed for that.
We're not designed.
It doesn't feel natural.
We're not designed for that.
We're definitely not.
So there's such an impact of that sort of electromagnetic fog, and that body electric gets such a hammering that almost that battery just goes right to low. And the first thing you need to do is reset that battery. And it's almost like grounding, getting your feet in the ground. And it's like those neurons need to be charged up again, all those electrons. So the electrons are the things that are positive, like negatively charged in, going for an ocean swim versus being in a chlorine pool. Like, it's a total difference.
Dude, the very first thing I did when I got home, because I felt like this almost like my skin was crawling when I got home. I think as I've consumed more mana and as I've led my life in a certain way, I just become more sensitive to things where maybe before I was blunted, to go back to that blunted conversation we were talking about. And so, yes, I did my mana. I had my Zen spray. I had my supplements, which mana is like the centerpiece of the stack. If I don't take the mana in the morning, I absolutely notice it. And then when I get home, it's like 8 o'clock at night. I'm traveling all day. It was actually 9 o'clock at night. The first thing I did was I just breathed and I put my feet in the grass in our yard. I didn't even go in the house yet because I didn't want to bring that energy to Carrie and my children.
Wow.
And it made a huge difference just by taking 3 minutes. It doesn't have to be so hard is what I'm sharing. I think with the demands of modernity and all the ways in which many professionals listening or watching are like, well, how am I supposed to make this practical? It can be 3 minutes. It can be 5 minutes. Taking a sachet is 10 seconds, So it doesn't have to be so hard is what I'm saying. If you love that video, you'll love the one on the screen right now. Click the one on the screen and enjoy.